know what a fidget spinner is? Yes, that's good. Been around long enough, I guess, now. So we are introducing a new type of fidget spinner at Play New York City, which is called Fidgetly Control, and there's a reason why it's called Fidgetly Control, and I think all of you guys will probably enjoy this. But first, before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about how we built this thing. So you guys know what this thing is made of? Plastic, bearings, maybe hybrid ceramic bearings, steel, whatever. This is a little bit different. Still made of plastic, high impact ABS. 3 parts to the frame, hybrid ceramic bearing in the center, so kind of common to your typical fidget spinners at that point. What's different though is that we have a PCB inside of it, which has a Hall effect sensor, gyroscope, accelerometer, LEDs, and a BLE chip and radio. And with all of that, and it's powered by 2 CR2032 watch batteries. So nothing to recharge here. Power model gives it months of usage under kind of normal conditions and when the LEDs are not abused. And the reason that we are building this product is because the first time that I played with our fidget spinner late last year, I wanted to understand what it was doing. I'm a tech entrepreneur. I've been building products and mobile apps and websites, and we've been getting connected hardware and things like that as well. And I knew that things spun fast, but I had no idea how fast it was spinning. And I knew it was spinning a lot of times, and as I played with it throughout the day, I was racking up a lot of kind of activity with it, but I had no idea how much. And I wanted to understand that, and I thought it would be cool for other people to understand that as well. And so we started working on a connected version of a fidget spinner, with the goal of gamifying the behavior of fidget spinning. So now when I spin this, or not this one, but this one, it's collecting data, right? It's telling me how many times it's revolving, or how fast it's spinning, or how many times I'm spinning it throughout the day. And then the other thing that's really interesting about these is that our customers were throwing them up in the air and catching them while they were still spinning. I can't do that. I don't have enough time to actually get good at that. But a lot of other people are doing that. They're doing lots of really cool tricks with them. And so as we started to consider what we were going to put inside of the Fidgetly control, we added some things that enabled us to do more than just calculate the spins, like a gyroscope and an accelerometer. And those things enable us to track airtime, so when you throw it up in the air and you catch it, whether it was caught or it hit the ground forcefully, and all sorts of other things like that, right? So all of that to build the Fidgetly Control app, which is a gamification experience of what you do with a fidget spinner. So it kind of takes all those key metrics like spin, speed, revolutions, airtime, all of those types of things, and there's a progression and a game built around it. You have daily quests where you're supposed to achieve certain things, learn tricks, perfect those tricks, and prove to us through the app that you actually know how to do the tricks. And then you have avatars, and you unlock avatars as you go, as you level up in the game. You get cooler and cooler avatars, and you can trick them out with accessories and all sorts of stuff like that. So kind of a traditional mobile game experience, right? Earn coins, experience points, level up, it's a game. What's interesting though, is that as we were building the product, we realized, and we kind of asked ourselves a question, if we can build a game around just like the fidget behavior, would it not also be possible for us to build other games using the data coming from the device? And so we started to think about the way that we interact with games, the way that we control games. It's pretty obvious. I think everybody in this room knows that the primary input device for a game on a mobile device is the touchscreen. You tap on it. Obviously, you got the gyroscope and accelerometer and things like that you can leverage as well, but the vast majority of games are leveraging the touchscreen, and we tap a lot on that touchscreen. It's unlike every other kind of gaming experience that we've had. I grew up playing Atari and Nintendo and Super Nintendo and PC games, and ultimately those games have kind of taught us that we should have relatively high fidelity control over the in-game experience. We have joysticks and D-pads and buttons and more buttons and lots of different ways that we can control these games. But now with Spider-Man, I'm pretty much kind of stuck with tapping on a screen to cast his web, or with Tap Titans, which is a really fun game. I tap the screen again and again to attack the little tomato-looking villain ahead of me, or the Endless Runner, where I tap the screen to make her jump, right? And those are cool interactions, but ultimately we started to say, what could we do with this when it's spinning? And by the way, I can spin it clockwise and counterclockwise. That's 2 different things. I could spin it slowly or fast. That means something different, right? I could spin it while holding it at this angle versus this angle or upside down, and that's all different too because of the gyroscope. And we have effectively created a 360-degree motion controller that we can now use to control games. We can also connect this not just to mobile devices, but to connected televisions, like an Apple TV, right? We've even had this thing connected to a PS4. That's not really kind of the area that we're focusing on right now, mainly focusing on mobile. And so we have launched a developer platform that has Objective-C and Swift SDKs, Android, and Unity. And we're at Play New York City for a very specific reason. We're actually announcing the launch of Fidgetly Control here, so this is kind of where we unveiled it to the world. We have a booth over at the main Terminal 5 location. Lots of people are playing games over there right now and having a lot of fun with the Fidgetly Control. But the real reason that we came here is because there are a lot of game developers and studios here. And ultimately, the very first game studio that had access to the Fidgetly Control was Simple Machine, right here in New York. I reached out to Kurt a couple of months ago and offered to buy Pop the Lock from him because I thought it would be a kind of cool to switch out the tap interaction, to kind of toggle left or right with a spin. He told me no. Evidently, that game's done pretty well and they don't want to let it go, but who knew? I personally like that game quite a bit. And that kind of got things started. That's why we're here today. Kurt and his team at Simple Machine have had access to our SDK and various stages of prototypical devices, some of which I'm not very proud of, but they got the job done. And they've been creating some cool experiences around that. So I'd actually love to switch over real quick and show some of those. First thing I'm actually going to show is just a utility app. So this is ultimately, I always figure when you do something live, trouble. Okay, so this is just a utility app that we distribute with our SDK to developers to kind of show you the data that's coming through off of the device. So if I spin it, I'm going to see real-time revolution count, and I'm going to see RPMs, right? When I stop the spin counter on the left is going to toggle up. I'm also going to see real-time kind of XYZ data off of the accelerometer and the gyroscope, which is really cool, because that ultimately converts to pitch, yaw, and roll, and is fairly easy to kind of integrate into games in really interesting ways. You can also control the LEDs, so everybody asks about that. So programmatically, there's APIs in the SDK that you can trigger that will make it do a circle motion with the LEDs, or we could do a fast blink or a slow blink or any number of other things. So those are all controllable as well. We do over-the-air updates, which the SDK supports as well. So you have a user playing your game, and your game is leveraging something that maybe wasn't in the SDK before but is now supported. You can actually push the over-the-air update to the device yourself as well, programmatically. So let's look at a couple of interesting games. Sorry, I have a lot of apps. So this is a simple game, which is kind of a take on a Flappy Bird style game. This is something that Simple Machine put together this week. So I spin to make my helicopter go up, right? And I stop it from spinning, and it descends. So we've effectively replaced a tap gesture. And if I run into a pipe, then I fall off the board and I die and I have to start over again, right? These are meant to demonstrate the capabilities of the device. This one is an idea that Kurt came up with that I think is absolutely brilliant and something that they've been hacking on a little bit here. That is not a game at all. In fact, he emailed me after our first conversation, and once we were under NDA and stuff like that, and said, I've got an idea. It is not a game, which I found funny because they're a game studio. But it's way sicker than a game. If we can make it work, like this is going to be way cooler than any game that is going to exist on, the control platform. I was like, okay, I'm intrigued, and he wouldn't tell me about it for like a month and a half, and finally we got him a version of the Unity SDK that he could actually test it with, and lo and behold, we have it. All right, so Do you think Fidgetly Control could be a music control device or an instrument? It can. And not only can I play the music forward, I can play it backwards. I can scratch. I can do all sorts of things like that, right? Kurt and Simple Machine came up with this and I think put this together in about a day. And if I really want to, I can play Michael Jackson, right? And this is loaded up with 4 songs, but at the end of the day, you could imagine connecting into Spotify or into the user's iTunes library or Google Play library, and effectively they can DJ. It's a lot of fun. You guys should stop by the booth if you haven't already and check it out because it's pretty cool to play with, especially on a speaker that's like pumping the music through. Okay. So this is another Studios game. It's a Clash of Clans style game called This Means War that a studio is currently integrating the Fidgetly control device with for launch in September. And it's going to enable game players to launch special types of attacks by kind of spinning up the device before they go into battle that will unleash an attack that they don't have access to unless they have a control device, which is pretty cool. It's another interesting way to use it. Again, most of this stuff that I'm showing you right now they're not ideas that we came up with ourselves. They're ideas that third-party game studios came up with once we kind of gave them the device and the SDK. This actually is an idea of ours. This is not our game, and it's actually not an exact game that is going to be integrated. It's just demonstration purposes. But we thought, oh, wouldn't it be interesting? This thing spins. What does a windmill do? It spins. It's powered by wind, in real life. But in a tap game, it might be powered by you tapping or something like that, which isn't nearly as cool as you spinning a device that kind of makes the same motion as the windmill would. And what's even cooler about this is that you guys are probably all familiar with idle games like Farmville, where I plant a crop, strawberries, for example, and then 20 minutes later I need to come back and harvest those, otherwise they spoil. And then I earn some money for that, right? And I get to continue to progress in the game. But ultimately, I can go away, be idle in the game, and then come back and I can progress. This actually creates the opportunity for a completely new type of paradigm, which I call kind of a reverse or inverse idle game, right? I can close the game in the app, and I can continue spinning. And this device ultimately is a fidget spinner, right? The value of a fidget spinner today, before control, is that it's a fidget object. The whole point is for me to spin it and to kind of occupy my hands and, create the motion that it creates or do tricks or stuff like that. It was a dumb device before today, right? But that same behavior, disconnected from the app experience or the game experience, this device will continue to collect data. All of the spins, all the revolutions, all the stuff that I'm doing with it in my hand right now, even though it's not actually connected to anything on my phone at the moment, is being stored in memory. And as soon as I open up that game or that experience, again, the SDK can suck all that data in, parse it, and ultimately, give me progression through the game that I was already playing. So inverse idle game, right? Completely new concept. Like we haven't been able to make games like that before, right? So I think that's a pretty cool idea. Rhythm-based games, rhythm-based music games. This is actually something we were thinking about before Kurt kind of finally told us what his musical instrument or kind of DJ sort of experience was all about. This is perfect for, kind of bouncing to a rhythm. The accelerometer in it, again, like when I move it like this, we collect all that data. You can use that data. The gyroscope, I could flick it and, kind of spin it around like that, and that's something else. There's all sorts of gestures that you can do with this device that can ultimately be mapped to a rhythm game or a bunch of different rhythm games. Tug of War, stupid simple game, right? Multiplayer, local or online, doesn't really matter. But let's say that there's 4 of us in this room that all have Fidgetly controls. We split off into 2 teams of 2 each. I spin mine counterclockwise. Actually, that's clockwise. And 2 other people spin theirs counterclockwise. We're tugging, and there might be strategies, around kind of like tug and release and things like that that ultimately make it harder for the other team. But we can create local multiplayer games with multiple Fidgetly controls, which is kind of what's happening with this anyways, except they're not connected to anything, right? kids are, not just kids, adults too, are competing against each other with the dumb fidget controller. Fidget spinner. They are, trying to see who can spin the longest. They are doing tricks against each other, all sorts of interesting things. It's just not quantifiable until control. I'll go back to Tap Titans, right? Or all the really popular tap games, like there's an opportunity to create a new genre of game that's similar to a tap game, but it's a spin-based game, right? So Spin Heroes or, something like that. And that's ultimately the packaging. So there's another really interesting thing that I like to highlight when I'm talking, to audiences that are game developers and studios. Fidgetly Control right now today, as of today, is actually available for pre-order on Fidgetly.com. They're shipping in September, late September. If you guys are developers and you want access to them early, you just have to let us know and we can get you yours early. We do have devices available today. The mass production units are on their way over from China right now. So we've already, in the last couple of weeks, spun up mass production. And we'll have plenty through the holidays, in fact, a lot. These are going to be sold in Target, Best Buy, and Brookstone nationwide. As of today, I can say all three of those are going to carry it nationally. There are a number of other retailers that we're in discussions with right now as well. So there's something really, really unique about Control in that it is a connected hardware device. Game developers don't generally have the opportunity to get exposure inside of retail stores very easily, unless they're a console game, right? But mobile games certainly don't get that kind of exposure because they're acquired through the app stores, right? There's no reason really for retail presence. These boxes and the PDQs, which are kind of the displays that will go next to them in some stores, have a lot of space to kind of promote what it is you can do with the device. And we'll be swapping this stuff out over time, the creative on it. The first 50,000 units are going to look like this, but there are a lot more coming behind that. And when we see really interesting things that are being done with the device, we will be throwing those things, those apps, those games into the packaging. There's also a dedicated section inside of the Fidgetly app, which is a directory of all of the games and apps that you can use Fidgetly Control with. So that's always a resource for users to go easily find stuff, and that will link out to the App Store or could deep link into the game experience itself if it's already installed on the device. So that is it. Thank you. We have a few minutes, or not, actually. 2 minutes. Any questions? Yeah.
So if I want to actually start developing,
You can stop by our Fidgetly booth over at Terminal 5 and talk to us. Let us know. We'll hook you up. Yeah. Very good question. Retail is $39.99. So tried to keep it pretty cost effective. Yes. Yes. Yeah, of course. Yeah, so doing that, so our VP of hardware, who's been building connected devices for a very long time, we've talked a lot about that. It would slow the spin down because naturally you have to harvest that power, there has to be some type of friction, right? And ultimately it would, it would kind of decrease the performance from a spin perspective. It's possible, but the other thing too is we can add rechargeable batteries to it, something we're exploring. So anything else? Awesome.
Super cool thing. We're really happy to have him here.
Thank you.
Please stop by and talk to them by their booth. I think it's amazing. So tell anybody else that wasn't in here that they should go talk to this guy, because I think we'll have some really cool games coming from the New York community for their device. So give him a round of applause one more time.
Thank you.